start now formally. So we welcome Professor Caroline Strong in this session number 6. And the session, I think many of us probably waiting for, and Professor Raj has joined now. Professor Raj, can you hear me? Professor Raj, can you hear me? You are muted. You are muted, Professor Raj. Yeah. So, today, Caroline will be talking about some question that the budding researchers and all the researchers are very, very keen.
We are getting somewhere. Thank you. I'm very bad technologically. My wife and you guys can figure out.
Same here, Professor Raj. So let's introduce.
That's our excuse.
So we are having a brief but very, very distinguished panel today in the listening to editors session. I have Professor Raj Seturaman, who is the editor-in-chief in the Journal of Retailing, and he will speak about in this session how to publish entire a journal. And we all look forward, and we are having both entire journal editors are there. And Caroline will be talking about something very interesting that is also cognitive and affective part, that is how to win the mind and heart of an editor. So if you can win the mind and heart, and that obviously in that case, your job is done. So without wasting much time, I would like to request Professor Raj to start with his topic. He's the first speaker, and I guess that it is working hopefully, or you are facing some issue, Professor Raj. Can you share the PPT, Professor Raj? Anuj, can you help, please?
Ma'am, please minimize this screen and then.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. But your PPT.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm so used to Zoom calls, and so WebEx has been a challenge. I'm also not technologically that advanced. That's my being a professor is an excuse for that. So thank you for being here. Let me just make sure that I can upload my PPT file, and I will get started quickly.
And Professor Raj, one thing, if you find any struggle there, you can send the PPT to Anuj. You can just send your email
it's
ID.
better that I operate. Let me try it. Let me try it while I'm on the.
Can you find the share button?
Documents desktop. This is the one that is 4. Is there 4 here?
Otherwise, we can get this.
Why don't you go to the next speaker?
Yeah.
And I will make sure that I get it done in about 10 minutes.
Sure, great. So let us just reverse the sequence. And I request Professor Caroline Strong, the editor of Journal of Strategic Marketing, to start the presentation, how to win the mind and heart of an editor. So Professor Strong, can you share your PPT? She has shared some time back, so I think there's no technical challenge.
You were going to share it for me because I can't.
Oh, I see. Anuj, can help, please?
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Perfect. So good afternoon from Wales, everybody. I know it's evening for you, but it's the middle of the afternoon for us on a very damp and windy autumn day here in Wales. I'd just like to say thank you very much for inviting me along. It's really nice. And hopefully I'll be able to help you in some way in the future publish in the Journal of Strategic Marketing. So my name is Carolyn Strong. I'm the editor-in-chief of Journal of Strategic Marketing, and I've been involved in the Journal of Strategic Marketing for quite some time now. Could I have the next slide, please? And the next one. I don't know why. Thank you. So some of you will know the Journal of Strategic Marketing because you've either submitted or published, or one of your colleagues have. I know some of your colleagues have published with us in the Journal of Strategic Marketing. Basically, the aim of this journal is to bridge the gap between marketing and strategic management.
Yes.
It tends to cover it tends to cover both. Can we go back one? Back a slide, please. There we go. So we invite submissions from academics and practicing marketers, but I have to be very honest in saying we don't publish many papers from practicing marketers because they tend to be more newsworthy papers and don't have a good theoretical grounding or don't contribute anything new. They tend to be quite opinion based. So although we do invite submissions from practicing marketers, academics are our focus. And obviously what we're looking for are new and interesting contributions which evolve and change with time. As you can imagine, currently I am getting so many contributions with the word COVID in the title, and it's starting to upset me because I want COVID to go away. I don't want to see it. I don't want any more COVID papers. Personally, I'm not talking about professionally, I'm talking about personally. We're always interested in new and evolving topics, and we welcome special issue contributions. If you're interested in editing a special issue, your first starting point is to contact me and explain your idea, and I will review if it fits into the journal. Could I have the next slide, please? So one thing I like to do when I'm talking to particularly young academics is to give a brief history of my involvement in the Journal of Strategic Marketing, because I think it's really important that young academics know that editors of journals are people just like you. We have families, we have other commitments, we have things going on, and most of us have worked our way up the academic ladder. I've not quite got to the top, I'm not saying that, but if just looking at the brief history of my involvement with the Journal of Strategic Marketing, which was created by Professor Nigel Pearcey and Professor Gordon Greenlee 26 years ago now. Well, Nigel Pearcey was my PhD supervisor, and he was looking to have an assistant on the journal editor, an assistant on the editorial board. And to be perfectly honest, I was his PhD student. He asked me to get involved. Of course, I jumped 10 foot to do anything that my PhD supervisor asked me to do. And I was really running around. It was collating reviews, contacting people. I wasn't really involved academically. I was more of an administrator. Then as I progressed, I became associate editor, and then unfortunately Nigel passed away a few years ago and I had to step in as editor-in-chief quite quickly. But the reason why I tell you that brief history is so that those of you who are in a position where you've been invited to join editorial panels or to be reviewers, it's very important for your academic career that you do take on that extra responsibility. So I took this responsibility on without knowing what the future would be, and that was 19 years ago. And I know it was 19 years ago because I was on maternity leave with my daughter at the time. So can I have the next slide, please? So the next few slides are some stats. I am not going to go through stats. I know that some editors like to tell you about the stats behind a journal, but if you need to know that, you want to know that, it's all available on the web page. So, you know, can I have the next? So, thank you. So here we go with I'm using this as an illustration of the fast increase of submissions we've had since March 2020. So some academics during COVID have not had time to research because they have been so busy with other things, including teaching, whereas other academics seem to have had an amazing amount of time. So submissions have increased by 50% since COVID. Globally, and as I said, this is generally, I think, because people have got more time, they're at home working, but this does mean that we are short of reviewers we're inviting more people to our editorial board, because obviously every single paper comes to me and I need help to manage that. So could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So one of the things that's quite important in terms of getting your work out there and read is the downloads. So at the Journal of Strategic Marketing, this was downloads from March 2019 to 2020, which has obviously increased. But the reason why I'm showing it to you is because it's quite interesting to see that we are a European-based journal in the majority. However, it's increasing. The submissions from Asia is increasing, as you can see, by 17% when I was last provided this data from the publishers. So I don't prepare this data. The publisher prepares a report every year and sends it to me. I'm not involved in the collation of any of this. So could I have the next slide, please? Submission trends here. You can see that at March 2021, we had as many submissions. We had an increase in submissions. I think it's about 650 or 60%, and that's March 2021. I can tell you that the submissions I receive, I tend to log on to the Journal of Strategic Marketing every Monday. And every Monday I have 20 papers. This time last year, this time before COVID, I'd have 20 papers in 2 weeks, in a month. I mean, it's phenomenal increase. Not just the Journal of Strategic Marketing, I might add. It's all journals. It's all journals of marketing. It's not just us who it's good that we're having this increase, but it does make the review process a little bit clogged and slow. So could I have the next slide, please? It's very strange not pressing for the slides myself. So because of the popularity of the Journal of Strategic Marketing, about 2 years ago, until 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 now, I've lost time with COVID, maybe more than that, I was the only editor in the Journal of Strategic Marketing. Because of the huge increase in submissions and the variety of submissions, I proposed to the publisher that we establish an associate editor board. So you can see here the current list of associate editors. I know each of these associate editors. They've either produced amazing research work, or they've been really supportive during as a reviewer. They've always been timely in their reviews. They've always acted really quickly in their reviews, and importantly, they've provided relevant and good feedback in their reviews. So as you can see from this list here, we have people from Spain, Australia, New Zealand. One question I quite often get asked is, do you send a paper to somebody? So if we had an Indian submission, would I send it to an associate editor in India? No, that's not how it works. It's by subject. I would think, oh, this is an amazing paper. So I would send it on to, I might think Zoe's a good person for it, or Adam, who's based in New Orleans. It's by subject and by research method. It's not by geographic location. So I've actually just appointed last week, I accepted 2 new associate editors, one from Turkey and one from Bahrain. So as you can see, we're increasing our global recognition, continuing to increase our global recognition. So could I have the next slide, please? So what I thought was quite important, so as I said, particularly for young academics, the submission and review process for publishing at Journal of Strategic Marketing. Basically, you go online, you submit your work. It takes 5 working days, 5 UK working days for your submission to reach my files. So the administrator at the publisher checks for plagiarism, checks the word count, for example, make sure that you haven't inadvertently identified yourself, that you have removed the cover sheet and those sorts of things. And that can take up to 5 working days. They then assign every single paper to me, and I then either desk reject it, or I send it on to an associate editor, and the associate editor and I might talk about the paper, but more often the associate editor either desk rejects the paper or sends it out to 2 reviewers. Now, how long does it take to review? It's like, how long's a piece of string? The turnaround is totally reliant on reviewers. We need 2 reviewers, and we cannot act on a paper until we have 2 reviewers. Please, bear in mind, reviewers are busy. They do make commitments. They then might say, actually, can I have 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks? But also reviewers do take on, do accept the invite to review and never activate it. So then I have to take the paper back and send it to someone else, which can draw out a paper submission. Something that's quite important at the moment is the online publication occurs within 6 weeks of the acceptance, as long as authors process their review. So once your paper's accepted, I send it to the publisher. The publisher will then send it to their technical people, and then they'll send it back to you to proofread it and approve. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is really the reason why I accept invitations as a guest speaker at Meet the Editor sessions is because I think it's really important. The title is a bit silly, about winning the heart of a mind of a journal editor. My advice as a long-standing journal editor on how to do that is, first of all, proofread your submission before you send it in. Make sure your references are okay. If I receive a paper on my desk and the first thing I see is a spelling mistake in a title, what am I going to think? And seriously, that does actually happen. Make sure you've proofread it. If it goes to a reviewer who's really busy and has accepted the invitation to review because they feel that they ought to contribute to the academic community, and there's lots of typing mistakes, there's grammar mistakes, they're likely to view it very negatively, aren't they? Even before, just think about when you see your students' work, it's exactly the same. Follow the submission guidelines. They're there for a reason. One of the things that can delay a paper is if a paper's been submitted to another journal, it's been rejected and then submitted to my journal as a second choice. Sometimes or forget to change the formatting and follow journal strategic marketing submission guidelines. So again, that can be quite time consuming. Accept variations in time to review. As I said, reviewers are volunteers who also have other work commitments. They don't get paid. It's all about contributing to our academic community. My fourth piece of advice is address the reviewer's comments directly. So when you get your reviewer comments, what you should do when you No, I haven't finished. Oh, hello. Can you go back?
Yeah, please. I think there's some disturbance from the background. So Anuj, please take care.
It's somebody who's not muted. I can see it's a delegate that's not muted.
Who is not muted?
I don't know, but I can see every now. That's what's causing it for me anyway. Is that
Anuj, can you please see what is the source of the problem?
Right, sir.
I think somebody from your office only. Okay, we can start now. Yes, please carry on.
Okay. So in terms of the reviewer's comments, everybody, when you get your paper back with a decision, everybody's quite anxious to look at the reviewer's comments. What I would say is I would not process negative reviewer comments to you. I read the reviewer comments first and I make sure that they're not upsetting, they're not offensive, that they are positive in terms of how to improve your work. I would do my best to make sure that there was nothing in that could hurt the feelings of the author. What I would say is, when you submit your second version of the paper, address the reviewer's comments point by point. Reviewer comment 1, this is what I've done. Reviewer comment 2, this is what I've done. And importantly, you can disagree with the reviewer. You can say, actually, thank you very much for your constructive points, but you've made an error. This isn't part of my work. This is the next stage. But you need to explain your opinion. Do not say, reviewer, you are wrong. You do not know what you're talking about. Address it very constructively and very positively. And the reviewer, I've had this with my own work. I recently went, my last paper that was accepted was a third review. And in our third submission, we said, we cannot do what you're asking. It's not possible, and it's not viable for the objectives of this paper. And it was actually accepted. So, you know, you don't have to agree with the reviewer's comment. My final 2 points really are around show respect and understanding. So by sending a message to an editor complaining that you've been waiting a long time for your work can be done, but show respect and understanding. So I weekly get messages saying, I really need to know the decision about my paper because I'm applying for a promotion or I'm applying for a new position at another university. Could you please tell me where we're at with that paper? Now, I would investigate a paper and maybe accelerate it, because if I could see, for example, there was review and the second review hadn't come in, I would chase the second review, because I would see that academic really does need quite a quick process. However, if I have a paper telling an email telling me that I'm incompetent and that they don't, you know, it's an insult that their work's been in review for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, I would just send back a very polite email saying, I'm very sorry for the delay in the review process. Because, as I said, reviewers are volunteers. Nobody gets paid to review. We all review papers as part of our citizenship. If you submit a paper for the Journal of Strategic Marketing, I would expect you at some point in the future to review a submission to the Journal of Strategic Marketing. I quite often have, again, I will ask someone to review one of our manuscripts, an author to review one of our manuscripts, and they come back and say, I'm too busy writing my own papers to review. Well, you know, who's going to review those papers when the busy professor submits them? We need to think about that, our contribution to the academic community. And my final point, which comes back to something that I do feel very strongly about, is please remember everyone involved in the journal is a person with feelings, with workload pressure, with a family life, with other things to do. Think about the impact of sending frequent and repetitive and annoyed emails to, whether it's the associate editor, to the publisher's officer, to me. Just think about, you know, so I'll give you an example. I took Monday as annual leave to visit my son at university, and I had an out of office reply. I had one professor email me asking about the status of his paper. He will have had my out of office reply. On Tuesday morning, he sent me the same email again and said, now you're back at your desk, will you please reply to my message? Well, I hadn't even got into the office, you know, he sent that so that's what I'm talking about. Just think about the impact of frequent and repetitive emails. And one of the things, my final point is to say, would you use the same words and the same tone to the peer review team, whether it's, as I said, the publisher, the associate editors, or me? Would you, the production team who are maybe looking at your proofs, if you met them face to face, would you say the same thing? Would you use the same tone? Just think about the wording of some emails, and as I said, particularly the frequency of emails, because hopefully, I mean, you know, just mentioning family life in there, you know, we are all people who are, this is our job, but there are lots of other things that we're involved in, other commitments, whether it's teaching, our own research, and other elements of our work. So, you know, I think that's the final slide, isn't it? So my as I said, my final point is really contact editors and ask them, meet with them. You know, we are here to help. You can also contact any of the associate editors who are listed. You might even know some of them, you might have published in their journals. You know, if you want with publications, and particularly young academics, I'm more than happy to help you develop your work. And that's how I want to position the Journal of Strategic Marketing, is that it's welcoming to young, new, up and coming academics in particular. So I think that's probably all I've got to say. I hope I didn't talk too long, because I do talk too much, I know.
Yeah.
So has anybody got any questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Caroline, for your insightful speech. And I am sure that some of the audience will have some questions. But we'll be taking the questions up to the end of the second speaker. We have reversed the sequence. So welcome, Professor, once again, Professor Raj Sethuraman, sir, whether the issue or tech issue has been resolved. So will you be able to share it? Sir, Professor Sethuraman, we can hear you actually.
Okay, yeah, we are. I'm trying to. No, this is. Did you put it?
Otherwise, you can send the PPT to
Yeah,
Anuj.
I have sent it to you also,
Oh,
but
I
I
see.
would like to be able to control that
Sure.
from even here. Yeah.
Great. So you can just take a few minutes. So you can try, and if it doesn't happen, then in that case we can.
Let's see.
It can handle for you.
Okay. Just to share.
Anuj, have you received the PPT?
I sent it to the FORE address that you gave
see.
me.
Yeah. I'm just forwarding it to Anuj.
I think file. It's still doing something. It's doing something. No, now it's not doing anything. Oh yeah, you can also, and I will have to say then.
Yeah. So what they can do, they can from there they can upload and they can change the slide, and you can speak. And after that, when you need the slide changed, so you can give the instruction accordingly. So just give 1 minute, so that I can tell them. Just
that file sharing is not there, or it's not. Maybe say continue. Yeah, he can. Sorry about that. It's not letting me share the file. At least. Oh, okay. So, wait, don't go. No, yeah, slideshow. Where do we? I just. Oh, I don't have control. Okay. Are you good? Can you hear me? No, I can't.
So we can hear you. We can hear you, so you can continue.
Okay. So who's operating the PowerPoint presentation? You're doing it. I'm doing it.
Tech team Anuj is there. Anuj is handling it.
Okay, he's the one who's doing it. So I have to tell him to. Okay. So yeah. So thank you for being here. Yeah. Let me start with the first slide. Next slide. I'll keep doing that. My name is Raj Sethuraman. As Nirmalya said, one thing good about COVID is it gives us an opportunity and willingness to share our viewpoints with a global audience, but at the same time, there are some tech issues, but that will happen anyway. So I'm really glad that I'm able to present before you for the FORE International Marketing Conference, and I thank Nirmalya and the organizers for giving me an opportunity to do that. Before going further, next slide, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. The next slide, please. So I also teach quantitative marketing courses, and one of the courses that I teach now, which I'm writing a book on, is called Thinking with Data, not teaching, Thinking with Data. And in that I say you can put anything as a dashboard, and someone challenged me to put my own resume. So this is my resume as a dashboard. It really is a collage of logos, and it tells me where all I've been to some extent and what I've done. So to give you background, which is the top red part, I am a chemical engineering graduate from REC Trichy, Regional Engineering College Trichy, now called NIT. Then I did my MBA from IIM Calcutta, and I wanted to combine my chemical engineering degree with my MBA. So I joined as a marketing analyst with Exxon Chemicals, and because I got interested in marketing, I joined my PhD in marketing at Northwestern University way back in the 80s. And for the last 30 years, I've been a professor at first at University of Iowa and now at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. In terms of the research on the yellow side that you see, I've published about 40 articles in a number of journals, including, of course, the Journal of Retailing. In terms of teaching, I teach mainly, as I said, quantitative marketing courses, customer insights, thinking with data, database marketing, and so forth. And in terms of service, which at my age has become quite pertinent, I review for a lot of articles. Carolyn gave a great speech on how to send your papers to editors from an editor's perspective. And so I'm a reviewer. I was a department chair for 11 years. And now I'm an editor of the Journal of Retailing. And in some sense, I'm going to talk about things. My subsequent presentation is going to be in my role as an editor, but I also founded two nonprofit organizations, Humanity and Charity Through Art. Next slide, please. So Nirmalya gave the topic as how to publish, or the marketing conference topic is how to publish in Tier 1 marketing journal. But I modified it slightly to say how to write a high quality, impactful research paper. And I want to say, and I will explain why I modified that after I define these three things. One thing is, when you define some construct, when you introduce some constructs, you have to define them or at least conceptualize them. So in what is high quality research, we used to have a 2R model that VK and other editors used to use called the R and R. It was equivalent of revise and resubmit, which editors like Aaron and I are used to. But R&R here is rigor and relevance. And I added two more called robustness and readability, which are becoming quite important these days. And what we mean is, in articles in general, we want to develop insights and address the question, what, why, so what, now what. And rigor has to do with the what and whys, which mean you have to have an appropriate theory, a conceptual framework, preferably, and a good data and a state-of-the-art or sophisticated model. And then relevance is very important. What are the theoretical managerial implications? But more so now, robustness and readability are becoming important. Robustness is, can it apply globally? So you can't say, I did some research on a mall in Hyderabad, Telangana, and then write that as a paper. You should say whether it applies in general to global markets, at least to some extent. And readability, as Carolyn also was pointing out, people just turn around, or they get a reject in JM or JMO or something, and then turn it around and send it back. And some people even use single-spaced. I hate single-spaced formatting. So readability, and more importantly, don't have spelling errors. And sometimes people even send you track changes, which tells me that you've not done your work. So these are the 4 R's of high quality research. The second is, next slide, please. What is impactful research? This we worry about also. We as editors primarily think about citation as impact, that if you write a paper, others should cite it. We still are governed by that, fortunately or unfortunately. Now, with more digitization, we have downloads, but the one that I have started, which is number of downloads, which are becoming extremely easy to capture and quite big, quite good. I think they are good because it tells you not only that they are, cited by other authors, so we're just writing to each other, but it is also being read through downloads. But the most important one that I would say, which we don't have a good measure for, is application. Is this applied? So in terms of citation, you may know ServQual is a journal of retailing publication by Pursu has got like 25,000 citations or something, which we know is important. Downloads, Grivol, Future of Retailing, which is a recent paper, has got a lot of downloads. But what is important is the paper on conjoint analysis by Srinivasan, Green, and everyone who's done a lot of good work and is being applied. So I would say if an article can be applied in the real world, then that is impactful. But even citations and others are good too. Next slide, please. So so we define what is high quality research, what is impactful research. Now, what is tier 1 journal? I've created 3 criteria of based on, we cannot ourselves call something as tier 1 journal. We have to let others do the judging or talking. And so here are 3 independent agencies which rank quality of journals, and so Australian Business Deans Council and so forth. And next slide, there are 8. I've deliberately chosen them because there are 8 journals that satisfy these 3 criteria. Next slide. And they all go by an acronym: Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, JCR, JM, JMR, and so forth. And Journal of Retailing, which I'm the editor-in-chief of, is there, one among the 8 of over 50 or 100 journals. And I would also say, at least in tier 1 journal, JBR and JPIM. Next slide, please. But what is important, and this is the reason why I modified the title, is you can write high quality, impactful research paper and send it to any other journal of strategic marketing, and more so in the Indian context, which I have some experience in. You can even send it to Journal of Indian Marketing. I hope there is one like that soon. And it can be impactful for the purpose that it's set out to. But in general, high quality, impactful research papers are the ones that are supposedly published in tier 1 journal. And that's why you have to aspire toward tier 1 journal, because the fact that you've published in it probably very likely ensures that it's high quality and impactful. So if you ask me in terms of preference for articles, impact is number 1, quality is number 2, and publishing in a reputed or tier 1 journal is number 3. But a lot of times there is high positive correlation among the 3, and that's why we specify how to publish in tier 1 journal as one of our goals. Next slide. Okay, now why should we make this talk in the Indian context? And I'm a database person, so I rely on facts and figures. And this is something that I compiled last year, earlier this year for 2020. We received in the Journal of Retailing 508 manuscripts, which is a record for the journal. And out of which number 3, USA is obviously first, China, and a close third is India. So we received the 3rd largest number of publications, manuscripts, not publications, manuscripts from India. And my friend who was an IJRM editor also said India is actually number 2 in submissions. So we are bronze and silver medalists. So there's a lot of good research being conducted in the Indian subcontinent and being sent to reputed journals, but the acceptance rates are low. And so we want to be able to do something about it. And I have instituted a grant in my father's name in Great Lakes Institute in Chennai, where I teach sometimes, giving them some money for encouraging publication in good journals. Doesn't necessarily mean top or tier one or something, but we have the stuff. We just should know how to do research and how to write a manuscript. So that's the reason I am excited about telling people how to publish based on my 30 plus years of experience. So next slide. So now I'm on to the next, So we started with how to publish in tier one marketing journal, and I talked about how to write a high quality, impactful research paper, why that's the topic. Now I'm going to even further turn the title into how to make a good academic sandwich, which seems kind of funny, but let me, next slide. I'm a big fan of sandwiches, and I go to Subway. I don't know if you know of a place called Subway, which is very popular in the United States. And that is, next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh, okay. It takes a little bit. So it has, you build the bread. First, they ask you what kind of bread you want, and then what kind of veggies you want. Do you want cheese or not? And then the reason I go is because they make the best veggie patty. I don't take meat. And then you top it off with top bread. So in a way, writing a good manuscript is like making a good sandwich. And there are, each part of the sandwich has an equivalent part or component in an academic manuscript. So next slide. So the bottom is really, even though we're building from top down, is going bottom up, because when you build a sandwich, you always go from the bottom. So the bottom bread is like the title and abstract. The veggies are like introduction, lit review, and the real meat is analysis findings, and then you top it off with your discussion conclusion. So I'm going to talk about each of those components briefly. So next slide. So let me, before you order or make a sandwich, you have to decide where to go. And there are even a restaurant to go, and there are so many places to go to, even just close to my own university. There is a Subway, there's McDonald's, there's Wendy's, which are burger places. You can go if you just want soup and salad. Super Salad is a place, or even Pizza Hut. So before you do research, you have to select a research topic. And it is, some people, to some extent, as Carolyn was also saying, you can think about, have to work on a hard topic. And here are some hard topics. Next slide. Okay, so the temptation is to say hard topic, and I do receive several papers on the COVID effect on marketing, which is very current and hot, technology in marketing and so forth. Working on hot topics, these are some hot topics. Supply chain, we are really having some supply chain problems, at least here in the US. So I encourage people to, but we haven't published a single paper. JBR has done on COVID effect in retailing or marketing. That's because we have got about 8 or 10 papers, but none of them pass our test for quality. It was not high quality. They just write something and just send it away because it's a hot topic. We don't encourage that. We encourage hot topic, but it has to be still rigorous and relevant. Even beyond COVID, we hope the COVID thing will go. So what is, it has to be just a marketing topic first. It doesn't have to be a hot topic, but it has to be something that you've done good work on. So the question then arises, what is a marketing topic? And this is something that you probably have covered in other parts of your sessions, but I just, and even Russ and other people may have done that. The people who spoke before this session. But what is marketing? And let me give you just my viewpoint of it, because I was schooled by one of the marketing legends called Philip Kotler, who wrote the very first book on marketing in way back in the 1960s. And when they started it, next slide, they defined, and now it has been modified as by the American Marketing Association. Next slide. So marketing is any activity that involves exchange and creates value. That is very broad. Even gift giving is part of marketing. Even COVID, trying to get everyone to take COVID shots here, at least in the US, where there's some opposition, is part of marketing. And I remember Philip Kotler was asked by Indira Gandhi, who was the former Prime Minister of India in the 1970s, to promote family planning in India. He was invited, and so that is part. Everything is marketing, so long as it involves some exchange and it creates value for both parties. Otherwise, they won't. It's a voluntary exchange. We redefined it, oh, not redefined it. We included it as saying any activity in the passage of goods when we took over as editor-in-chief, Raghvin and Sethuraman. So it is any activity going from good supplier to consumer. So the reason I'm saying that is marketing is all encompassing. It's an everyday life activity. So anything that involves exchange, value creation, moving from supplier to end user, or fair game for marketing. There are so many topics in marketing, and that's the beauty of it, is that you can get excited about any topic and work on it. Next slide. So then how do we get research ideas? And most of the time it is just something that happened to you. So you don't have to do it. It's not rocket science. We call it serendipity, just as is. In fact, my thesis in the 80s was on private labels, which I got that idea by walking in a grocery store where in Dominic's, which is a retail store in Chicago, where I did my PhD, and there was a national brand bread at $1 and the private label or store brand at 25 cents. So nearly for one fourth or 1/6 sometimes. So I started working on it. What is it that people, and some people call me Mr. Private Labels, because I still work in the area of private labels. Not many people are interested in it, which is good for me. Then I have the niche. So that just happened to me. I can't say why I did that. And I've continued to be excited. Some people look for gap in the literature. Some people work with whatever topics their mentor or advisor is working on. Some people, which especially is true of things, thesis and articles that I see coming from India, or they see some workplace personal observed problem. Those are all good reasons why you want to work on a particular marketing research idea. So the fact that marketing is all encompassing and you can get ideas just really should excite you into working on it. Next slide. Okay, now now that we've decided what topic to work on, let's start building the sandwich or the manuscript. The first is the title and the abstract. And let me quickly go to the next slide. So what is a good title? There is no rocket science, but I handcrafted a little bit as editor because we have some leeway. And as Kevin was saying, once it is close to acceptance, the authors are willing to do anything that the reviewers or the editor are saying, at least especially the editor, what the editor says. So I make sure that the title is interesting, But importantly, most authors want to say they are conquering the world when all they're doing is, saving some village in India or US. So in that sense, don't overclaim what you're doing. Make the title reflective of research. So just as an example, I just received a theory of multi-tier private label in marketing. There was no theory there that was just all encompassing or that was kind of revolutionary. So I said, take out the theory. And people don't even know what multi-tier private label is. Say it is including budget private label and premium private label to standard private label. So don't overdo titles. Next slide. Here are a bunch of titles we have accepted in the recent Journal of Retailing, June 2021. As you can see, it's all over the place. What I like, the one that I like is Picking Gifts for Picky People. It's simple, intriguing, and interesting. You don't have to write an intriguing, but it just has to reflect what you're doing. And the reason I say this is people, they spend so much time on doing the manuscript, they don't see that these things do matter a little, especially for impact and citation. So write a good title, as good a title as you can. Next slide. Abstract part, again, I handcrafted. I worry about it a little bit more than others. I don't know if you know a person called Deepak Jain. He was my mentor and committee member, and we wrote a really good paper. It never got that many citations. And he says the reason is we did a lousy abstract. So writing a good abstract helps. And the reason it's very important, it is not, again, it's an art. It must reflect 4 or 5 things. It must have good motivation, why you're doing this research scope approach. It may even have the databases and what you find and the implication. The problem is you got to do it in 200, 300, 500 words, whatever the journal has limitations on. And the reason is, if you see the next one, just go one more time. On the next spot. Yes, the reason is sometimes, and even I do that, abstract is the only thing I read of articles. And if they excite me, then I go to the next rest. So it is both a gateway for reading the article and sometimes the only passage to understanding the paper. So it is very important to write a good abstract. Next slide. So I've written a couple of recent abstracts that we okayed. This one is good. I don't want to read all of it, but it has good motivation, talks about 3,311 households, which is good. I think 59 categories, but at the end, it doesn't say what it is very vague on results and implications, even though it was accepted. Next slide. So I like this abstract better. It is very simple. So it tells you what even food eating by children is part of marketing. And it tells you that the problem is important. What is the basis for FORE experiments or something, and what it finds in certain social norms are more important than other things in making sure kids eat healthy food. And then the last sentence, people always say the implications and discussions are discussed. I hate that sentence. Obviously we know the reason you write a manuscript is to write the discussion and implications, but state at least what it is if you can. Don't say discussions, implications, future limitations are discussed. Most of the times are presented in the paper, because then they have to read the paper. If you can, tell them very quickly what it is, if you can. Next slide. Okay, now we come to the Veggie's introduction and lit review. I put Veggie because it's the sprinkling that you have to give it a flavor. But introduction is very important. Next slide. is that's what sometimes again we read carefully. Next to abstract, we read the introduction. Most of the people read the introduction and the final conclusion, and then they're done because they don't want to bother themselves with the middle of the manuscript. That's for real hardcore readers or researchers. So you want to motivate with real world examples. I always say, tell me why this is important. Don't give me straw man problems, and state the research questions I'm going to handle. It is all problems are large and big, but you're handling probably a small slice of the problem in terms of research questions. So state 1, 2, 3 and state why it's important. So in this is called positioning the article, and somehow Indian authors don't do that good a job of positioning. It is important, and the best way is to find a master positioner as a co-author. Sometimes he or she doesn't know the technique behind it or the research, but they can position well. So next slide, the one that I got on early on, you may know this guy, Gerard Tellis, who is very successful even now. So when I was writing on one of the private labels related paper, but it was on discounting and so forth. So next slide. So we wrote a paper on an analysis of the trade-off between advertising and price discounting. So let me talk about the title. Originally, a person called Don Lehman was the editor for this. And we said, should we had it as, should we include price discount or advertising? We tried to make it very exciting. He said, you are doing a very basic thing. So just say an analysis. So simple title, but is catchy or something that makes people read. And let me tell you one more sort of observation in some sense. If you put a colon or a question mark, someone found that the probability of acceptance increases by 6%. So you have 6% higher chance of publishing if you put a question mark or a colon in the title. So we try to use that, and many use that now. I mean, not for necessarily for publication, but it makes it more exciting. So next slide. So he writes it this way. You can read it. Our price cuts more profitable and stuff. Just the first paragraph made people sit up and read the rest of the manuscript, and that's why we got this as an Odell Award for the most contribution 5 years later. Sometimes they judge the very next year the citations. Sometimes they judge after 5 years to see if it has had, because it takes 2 to 3 years to publish. So 5 years seems like a reasonable thing. Go ahead. It's Odell Award. Yeah. Then the lit review part. This I worry, and this again from Indian authors that we get, people just go on and on. They think the more literature review they write, the more it reflects their knowledge. But we are not interested in how much knowledge you have. This may be one chapter in your thesis or something, whole lit review. So the more lit review you do, the less focus it is on what you have done. We are interested in what you are doing that contributes to the literature. So don't overdo the literature. Don't write 20 pages out of 40 pages, just literature. And don't say, he said this, she said this, he said that. We are not interested in that also. We are interested in how what they said pertains to the research that you are doing. Now, it's become fashionable to use a comparative literature review. So here are 10 papers, 10 key papers, and these people do this, but ours is 11th paper, and we do this and more. So that kind of comparative lit review has become popular. Next. So analysis findings, go ahead. So it has to, this is the real meat. And I think a lot of people have good data, but you have to use, but don't use just means and standard deviation, simple descriptive statistics. We have gone beyond that. As at least you have to use an econometric model now, Bayesian and stuff. So read the journal that you are publishing in before deciding what methods to apply and how to write relevant reader friendly. Next slide. Okay, the part is the next slide. Yeah. So this is what my advisor, Ann Coughlin, told me. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. All these parts have to be good, especially the first and the third part have to be good. Next. So be problem driven. And this again, when I am the editor, as an editor, we read the positioning, front end and the back end. And there you can be speculative. You can say, oh, we think this will happen because of our results, and offer some solutions. You hopefully started with a problem in the intro or research question and then offer some solutions. Next slide. So here are all the tips so far. Work on any marketing topic that you're passionate about. Not necessarily it should contribute to marketing theory or practice. Satisfy the 4 R's. Open with an interesting research. Write a powerful abstract. Position the paper well, and so forth. Listen to reviewers. So you can see that. I don't want to read all of that. But importantly, I want to spend 1 minute on the next part. What makes, next slide. What makes a good researcher? Next slide. Okay, next slide. So we know about the 4 P's: product, price, place, promotion. It's still, this was introduced by Eugene McCarthy in 1966. We still use it. I use it still for when I teach marketing. But there is an equivalent 4 P's for, next slide, that a good researcher should have. Planning, pertinence, passion, persistence. So next slide. Planning and pertinence. You have to plan your research and work on pertinent topics. Doesn't mean that it has to be a hard topic. Here are some good topics that are important, and we are slowly getting, at least from a Journal of Retailing standpoint that I know more about, we're trying to services. I didn't put services here. Service marketing is important. Societal retailing, we don't get that many. It's harder to write with some of these good papers simply because data are not there or literature is not well established, but that's good too, or any other topic. Next slide. Okay, so, but more importantly, even beyond planning and pertinence, you must have passion and persistence. You must be passionate about what you do. Being a professor or being a researcher, you're a one-man enterprise. Nobody is there to tell you what to do. No boss of yours, which is a good thing, at least not technically. So you have to love the research that you do, and you have to be that is passion, and you have to be persistent. I have, even though, as I said, I published 40, like Ghazni Mohammed, I've been attacking, like Carolyn was talking about third or fourth review. I've been attacking journals for 30 years. I've written over 100 manuscripts. A lot of them still, were rejected. And so you have to think that you're still good, or keep persisting, even when you get rejects, and try to, but reviewers or the bosses, once you submit a manuscript to a journal, you should try to satisfy them. Doesn't mean you have to do everything that they say, but you have to try to address them to the best of experience. And the reason I am still, and most of us are still, is because we do love what we do as a teacher and researcher, and I hope you do too. So thank you. Sorry for the slight technical glitch. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for this insightful address. And now it is time for questions. So if anybody is having any question, please write in the chat box so that I can ask to the concerned speaker. I have not yet received any question. I have a question here that that probably those who are the budding researchers who don't have much exposure to publish. So if they want to start publishing, they want to start research and publishing. So how should they proceed? I mean, some basic people, those who have not having any background of publishing in tier one journal or even tier two. So I direct it to Professor Raj.
Okay, thank you. I was visiting both IMB and IMC recently. This was before COVID in 2019, and met with a lot of PhD students who are at the stage that you're talking about, that they are, first, you must have an interest or passion in research. Without passion, you just cannot survive. This is a dog eat dog kind of thing, even though it is not as, as aggressive as the corporate world. This is a publish or perish world in our case. And what I see in among students in is that they are willing to take what it takes, do what it takes to publish, but they have to get started somewhere. First, they have to get interested in a topic and then see how they can advance marketing, to how they can contribute either to theory or to practice. So they have to then read a lot about what it is. Then they have to come up with a certain set of a motivation of why they're doing it, and a bunch of, as I said, research questions. It can be very kind of more a draft form. And I have found sometimes, and I've tried to help too, in that process, is having a good co-author who's been somewhat experienced helps in moving the ball. And then write something and keep polishing. I am still writing a manuscript and I have to work on it 20 times. This is my 20th revision of my own manuscript before I send. So, and that's the persistence part of it, even in writing the manuscript. And the other is give it to other people and to see if it makes sense. And read articles in the journal that you are aiming for or planning to publish in, just to see. We get a lot of manuscripts who have no clue about what it takes or how a paper is written in the Journal of Retailing. So those are the few things that I would say are good things. First, you got to have a good topic, a good motivation, and a good co-author.
Yeah, I'm having another question before I give to Ans. I think Ans also having a few questions in mind, and others maybe. That is, there is a perception among, not among the researchers particularly, that if you are having a lot of comments or maybe AMOS or structural equation modeling in the paper, then it increases the chance of getting published. And when you are having something qualitative, it will not be published very easily. There's a perception. Okay, so how would you respond to that? Means I'll be going to both, first to Caroline and then to Professor Raj.
Sorry, was your question that papers with very high detailed stats?
My question, I repeat, there is a perception among researchers, at least here I have seen, that if the paper is loaded with quantitative analysis or maybe structural equation modeling, it increases the chance of getting it published in the tier A journals. But if you are doing on something qualitative, the chances are low. So how do you react to that? Both the editors I'll be going.
Journalists are saying, and in fact, some papers that have very very detailed and very well discussed stats analysis can be very dull to read. I think Raj mentioned readability. Now, I have found that papers which are very highbrow statistical papers aren't readable, so, and I wouldn't judge a paper just because it had a lot of statistics compared to one that was interviews or experiments. And you can, I think you could probably see that if you have a look at the general methodologies in the Journal of Strategic Marketing.
Yeah. So, Professor Raj, anything from your end?
Now, because of my, I guess, long experience, the person who introduced causal modeling, what we now know as structural equation modeling. Originally, the popular one was Lizrel, which is written by Yoreskog and Sorbaum way back in the 60s, 70s. A lot of people made their career out of it, just like scanner data in US, and that became very popular. The reason was that it was called causal modeling, that they thought somehow they can establish causality through structural equation modeling. But I personally feel experiments are better ways of trying to establish causality. So from a conceptual standpoint, I'm not that enamored. And especially I see of the type that you are talking about a number of submissions, especially from India. And they have all kinds of arrows going all over the place with coefficients, structural coefficients, plus, minus, statistical thing and stuff. All that is baloney. To me, I think it is simplicity is better. 2, 3, or 4 hypotheses. Establish it well if you want, and make sure that it is sound, theoretically sound, rather than trying to play these puzzles with all that. So I'm not a big fan of structural equation modeling, and we don't think that that is necessary for doing good research. If that is the right one, it is. It was in the 80s, 90s. Everybody wanted to do structural equation modeling. It's kind of going a little bit out of fashion now, I think.
Yeah, actually, I'm having another question. So that is, we talked about when we talk about Caroline talked about how to win the heart and mind of editor. Now, my question is regarding heartbreaking. That means when a new researcher, and after submission of this thing, and maybe after 6 months, and now some of the journals take 8 months also, gives a rejection in the very first review. So that is a great frustration for everybody, particularly the new researchers, particularly PhD scholars. So in such case, how to handle with that emotional issue? So if anything, you can just respond.
Go ahead. I'm not
Do you want me
here.
to speak?
You can. Yeah.
Yeah. Caroline, and then Professor Raj. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I would say that a young academic submitting should say that in their cover letter, because we quite often get submissions with no cover letters, so we've got absolutely no knowledge of who submitted that paper. It could be a very eminent professor with a long standing, or it could be the first paper someone's ever submitted. If that's not detailed in the covering letter, how would we know? What I would also say to young researchers who get rejected is, first of all, talk to a colleague. First of all, don't open emails from journals late Friday afternoon when you're all going home for the weekend. Leave it and open it on Monday, because then you can go and have a coffee with somebody. You can go and talk to somebody, who can put perspective on the review, because of course if it's a rejection, it's going to hurt. Nobody liked it. And I would also say that I think most editors wouldn't send very harsh reviews back without changing the tone of the tone of the review. So when we click reject, we get to see the reviews, and I would make sure there was nothing upsetting, nothing that I would perceive to be upsetting in that. But as I said, it's identifying yourself as a new researcher that's most important.
Professor Raj, anything from your end?
Yeah, we have, since I took over, that there is something called desk reject. Desk reject is we don't even send it to reviewers, because we know reviewers are voluntary, and so we don't want to take away too much of their time trying to read papers that may not go through the system or something. So our desk reject rate now has actually slightly increased, which since I took over, about 65-70%. And we worry about that because, you know, they've put in so much time and all you're doing is you're not even sending it for review. So that is the first stage. There's two stages, one after the review, one before the review. So I worry about that a lot. And I try to send it on Sunday or Monday. I work mainly on weekends on papers. So there is, we try to make the important thing, I would say, from both sides. The important thing from the editor's side is to be explained why you made the decision you did. It could be even risky revision, whatever. And even in desk reject, sometimes I do it overnight, think about it, and then give a fairly one-page explanation of why it is desk rejected. Some are curt because they don't even know what it is. The problem is this. The second is from the author's standpoint, you have to be willing to accept, and that's what I will say. It is, you have to persist. No, there was a time when if we take a reject letter to the bar, they'll give us free beer. So I've had several free beers like that. So there is, I mean, those days we're talking about, there was not email, so they were actually by paper and pencil. You have to be willing to take from the author's side that this is a learning exercise. And sometimes it is also easy to criticize or curse the author's editor and the reviewers, but editors and reviewers are like human beings like everyone else. And you're both an author and a reviewer a lot of times. So you just have to be willing to accept that this is part of our career. And it is for the senior folks like you and others to say, well, it takes time. And we are in India, especially, we are in the developmental stage of understanding what it takes. And that's why I am thinking, sometimes we think, at least in the US, 9 of those 10 journals, tier 1 journals are from US. We think US is the world. So anything in India, you say, oh, it works in India, but it may not work in US. But if it's written for US with US data, they say, oh, it is correct. So you should have good theory and applicability. And it's a process of developing. And the reason I say that is I wish there was a journal that is exclusively for, because the kind of problems that are faced in a developing country are different from the kind of, not all of them, but there is some overlap, some. So you should have even a separate journal that writes good quality articles that pertain to the context you're working. It could be European, it could be Indian, whatever it is. My short answer is you should be willing to accept as an author that this is part of the game.
Thank you, sir. Professor Ansh, do you have any question? And if anything from the...
I think most of the questions have been covered, so I'll open it up to the audience.
So anything, audience, any question you can write in the chat box. I think there is some thing. Let me see. So there's a comment. Yeah, right. I think you have to just enlarge it now. You can see. I think there's a question from Basant. That is, do you take risk with the young author whose research looks promising, but not with a guarantee? So I repeat the question. Do you take risk with the young author whose research looks promising, but not with a guarantee? So how would you respond to that if any one of you can take it?
Yeah, do you want to?
Okay, so well, first of all, as I said, how would we know it's a young author if you haven't informed us in your cover letter? And secondly, it would depend on the level of risk. So it's not just a risk for us as editors, it's a risk for a young author. So we could say, look, I'm afraid 2 reviewers have recommended reject, and here's some really good feedback that you can work on for the future. We might take a risk and allow you to resubmit. So the young researcher goes away, spends 4 months on a resubmission and it's still not accepted. So it's a two-way risk, isn't it, really? The author needs to think, well, can I do something else with this work? Should I change pathways with this paper, or should I persevere? And that's a dialogue. As I said, in my presentation, it's a dialogue you can open up with editors. We are people who we're sitting in our offices in Cardiff, for example. We're reading reviews. We make a decision based on those reviews without any personal context. So a younger researcher could come back and say, this is where I'm at, and I would like to make a request. It's two-way. But I think the most important thing is, how would we know you're a young researcher unless you tell us?
Yeah, one question here from Nanda Chaudhary. That is, what to do when got stuck with a paper, particularly when review suggestions are very interesting, difficult to implement. Say I got a review to collect an additional data, but it was extremely difficult during COVID-19. So how to address that type of situation? Think not implemented. If Professor Raj can respond to
that. It is. So let me address the previous one. We are age independent. We don't think once it's up, this is just our view. It's more sort of driven by American culture. We don't think of, unlike Carolyn, what Carolyn said, we don't think of anyone as a younger or older author. We just look at the manuscript for what it is, for one reason. Second is that most of the papers are co-authored. When I was developing, I always tried to write single authored papers. I have, at least among my peers, one of the most single authored paper submissions, and I work at it a lot. Sometimes it succeeds, sometimes it fails. So, but those days are gone. We no longer have that many single authored papers. They are all co-authored, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 or 5. And the reason is because the marketing field, both in terms of research and applicability, has evolved. So you cannot do research with just one person, generally, because of the data, digital data, big data, analysis have become so sophisticated, are increasing, AI and all, ML and all that, machine learning. And so the standards have developed, have become higher. And so it's better to have 2 or 3 co-authors, and that's not a problem at all. So we don't think of age as a particularly defining moment for us, criterion for us. The second is, you're asking about tough reviews. It is something that we face ourselves, and I have faced myself personally too. I've got one from JMR where it almost seemed like they were asking me to scale Everest, Mount Everest. So, so sometimes I leave it, but generally, and everybody has been complaining, critiquing me for leaving it, letting it go. You should try to do the best you can within a short time frame. That is, if nowadays R&R, as we in the traditional term, revise and resubmit, is not easy to get, at least for top journals. So you should work at it, and you should try to, and this goes back to, the first article I wrote based on my PhD thesis, which was with Jagmohan Raju and another I joined with 2 other authors because they did, and Deepak Jain was the editor for it in management science, and we just had to change so much. So by the time we submitted the original manuscript, the final published manuscript was nowhere even close to the original one. So you have to, and it got an award. It surprised me. It's because of what the reviewers did for us. So you have to think of reviewers as being helpful and try to do the best you can. And we want the reviewers to be constructive and so forth. So it's a combination of both. Try to do the best you can, but at the same time, don't spend too much time on it. That's my
Thank you. So any more question? I think I can't see any more. So I think we have already, some questions there maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah. So So I don't have any question more. So thank you both. I think one of the most rewarding sessions, and we will be posting this. One of the participants asked that whether we'll be able to get these recordings posted, and yes, we'll be posting it in the LinkedIn also in our institution sharing this. A great session, I should say, for both. And personally, personally, I'm grateful to Professor Raj and Professor Caroline because before this conference, I was not knowing anybody. It is only LinkedIn, social media that made it possible to connect and then to collate and that way. So thank you so much for coming here and look forward to our contact, connect will be there. And this insightful thing will last with us and hopefully in the coming days will be those who have attended or will see this presentation, this lecture, this session, in that case they'll be benefited. Surely they'll be benefited. So thank you so much. Anything from Vansh?
Thank you so much. Thanks, Professor Caroline. Thanks.